So what we were discussing is the prevalence of lumbar spine pain as well as oblique type injuries in your players, which as far as I'm hearing is quite prevalent. Okay? Now, based on the stuff that we did yesterday with regards to spinal segmentation, let's think through this process logically. If you have someone who's swinging a bat, okay? So they're in position, they're going to swing through. Now picture, if you will, that there's a section of lumbar spine which is unable to dissociate, or the vertebral segments are unable to move relative to one another. Of course, like I said yesterday, the spinal rotation that occurs between segments is very minimal. We're talking millimeters. That's why I always say the spine doesn't move as much as it bends and it torsions. But if you have an area of the spine that is not moving, where will most of the forces be distributed to? The joints above and below. Not necessarily the joint above and below. Like I said, the spine is not made of, don't think of it as individual segments. Because there's so much connective tissue deep in and around the spine, it's not like one segment can just twist on another. We're just talking about torsions. But if you have a section of spine that's not moving, then all of those millimeters account for a lot. So if you have someone swinging a bat, and they don't have that segmentation then you're obviously going to put more stress on the section or area above and the section or area below. Now, if you're talking about oblique strain, the exact same thing will occur. If you have an area of spine that's not rotating, the section above, that particular site where those obliques are kind of attaching into that spine or coming back and around, that area will over-rotate and you'll be in more jeopardy of injuring that oblique or that spinal segment. Now, I want to tie this back into the whole idea of mobility exercises, because a mobility exercise is not a mobility exercise unless you have joints that move. So like we talked about yesterday, if you're prescribing this exercise, with your arms back here and you're doing this type of exercise, or you're in this position and you're doing these types of exercises, those are not mobility exercises unless the spine is able to segment. If the spine is not able to segment, then what that exercise is doing is reinforcing stress, strain, and bad movement into the joints above and below. That's why we don't assign random mobility exercises. We have to first create the joints that we're trying to create mobility in, and then we start to prescribe mobility exercises. So technically, a lot of the mobility exercises that people are prescribing nowadays are likely going to end up making the problem worse or are going to predispose them to injury. Especially spinal mobility exercises. A lot of the ones that are being done now is in the upper thoracic spine. People are having a hard time understanding how to gain mobility in the upper thoracic spine because a lot of people don't have that extension. As we talked about yesterday, don't just assign random mobility exercises. Segment the spine first, create the joints, and then you can go ahead and start to assign mobility exercises in order to reinforce the torsioning in that particular area of the spine.